Believe it or not, we are already 1/3 of the way through the fantasy football season. 6 weeks in the books, 6 weeks of data to determine whether these 7 players are trending or ending in fantasy football. Now, we'll start with a few interesting names at the top because, fellas, without CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens has drawn 9+ targets in 4 of his last 5 games. He has been absolutely on fire, the wide receiver 1 overall over the last 3 weeks. We polled the people over on Instagram, just as we always do for these episodes, whether or not this trend will continue. And 66% think that the George Pickens hot streak is going to continue. So Cameron, I'll start with you here. Considering CeeDee Lamb is hopeful to return next week, can we continue to get this level of George Pickens?
I don't know if you necessarily get this level, but I think we're going to get pretty darn close, even with CeeDee Lamb back. Right? I mean, where he's at right now is pretty ridiculous. He's 3rd in yards. He has 6 receiving touchdowns. Right? I mean, this is full breakout George Pickens, and you're going, Cameron, CeeDee Lamb's the wide receiver 1, obviously, when he gets back. But let me tell you, the Cowboys currently 3rd in pass attempts, 1st in completions, 3rd in completion percentage, 3rd in passing yards, 2nd in passing touchdowns. Even if he's the wide receiver 2, they have enough volume in this passing game with as good as he's playing, that him and CeeDee are both going to get fed in this offense. I don't think we're necessarily going to see two games out of his last 3 like we have, where he was over 130 yards and 8 catches and a touchdown in each. I don't know if that height necessarily continues. But to see him as a top 15 option, for sure. Could he be a top 12 option? I think so, in the way that he's playing and this offense is going.
Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys aren't an NFL football team right now, Ty. They are a fantasy football team because with the Micah Parsons trade now, this defense is just putrid. They couldn't stop a chicken if it ran through the middle of their defense. And Kenny Clark is nowhere to be found either. It's tough to see him make an impact when teams are literally running all over the Dallas Cowboys, which means, hey, if other teams are putting up a fight against the Dallas Cowboys, it means all we're going to get is more passing on the offensive side of the ball. And even with CeeDee Lamb, at what point do we just say, hey, George Pickens as a supplemental to CeeDee Lamb, maybe we're not getting 9+ targets a game, but could George Pickens get a healthy 7 targets per game from here on out? To me, that's just so in the cards with how terrible this defense is.
It is to a certain extent, and it draws a lot of comparisons to the 2024 Cincinnati offense, where you've got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. A lot of people are going to go, well, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, why can't they repeat it? And honestly, the reason why it probably won't be on the same level is because there's a Jake Ferguson in this offense that Cincinnati did not have last year. And I was curious to see exactly where most of George Pickens's production has come from without CeeDee Lamb, sans CeeDee Lamb. There you go, Cam. That's 4 times in the last month or so.
Old. It's already so old.
Stop
it's
it.
a short bit at the very end.
Nope, just get used to it. Just appreciate it for the English that it is. So George Pickens, about 51% of his yards since CeeDee Lamb went out with injury have come between the numbers. So he's been used more over the middle parts of the field than before the injury, which is nice to see. But when CeeDee comes back, do we see Pickens kind of regress back to that number 3 guy in terms of middle of the field usage, and that he is just kind of pigeonholed to being just the outside guy, which he can still produce with? But if you're asking us, can Pickens also be a top 12, top 15 guy on the year if CeeDee Lamb is going to return back to his top 3 status? I think that's just it's a tall ask, I think, is the best way to say it. It's possible, but I would take my chances that it's not going to happen.
The number one thing I'm going to be looking out for when CeeDee Lamb does return to this lineup is, are they going to continue moving George Pickens around? Because prior to this last week, they hadn't been moving George Pickens into the slot as much. But in week 6, Joel Smith had pointed this out over on Twitter. George Pickens, 21% of his routes did come from the slot in week 6. So if they're willing to kind of give this inside-outside versatility, kind of like what the Rams are doing with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, if they can both kind of slide inside and out, that could end up being the George Pickens benefit too. I'm curious to see, Ty, like you mentioned, how that actually plays out once CeeDee Lamb returns. Before we get to another similar player to George Pickens in terms of the spot he finds himself in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell as well, so you know when our newest content is out. We know a lot of you watch our content, and a lot of you actually haven't subscribed to the channel yet. So our goal, yes, is to provide you insights that we're using to beat each other, to beat our friends in fantasy football. But really, we want to remind you of the fun and camaraderie that comes with the game of fake football, the unifying game that brings us all together, that brings your buddies together every year to have some fun watching the game we all love. That is the NFL. Ty, let's move it over to Rico Dowdle here. I'll come right back to you first because holy cow, Rico Dowdle has now scored 30 plus points in back-to-back games in half PPR formats. I mean, it's absurd. 234 total yards this last week against the Dallas Cowboys. How about another 239 against the Dallas Cowboys this week? Look, trending or ending, this feels like a trap question because obviously 30 points is unsustainable. You do have Chuba Hubbard potentially coming back to the lineup next week. Dave Canales has already been asked, hey, is Rico Dowdle taking over as the running back one for this team? In his words, we'll see. So I'll start with you. Where does Rico Dowdle fall in this backfield now?
I feel like at least for the first week or two when Chuba Hubbard comes back, I feel like you can still get away with starting Rico Dowdle because I feel like there's still a chance that Rico Dowdle ends up getting more touches than Chuba Hubbard just because they play a hot hand. And with the explosiveness that Rico Dowdle has shown in these last two games that Chuba Hubbard has not really shown in the last year and a half, I feel like you can't take Rico Dowdle off of the field right now. So unfortunately, that means that we're getting, obviously the ceiling of 30 half PPR points per game is going to take a hit. The floor is also going to drop a little bit as well. But again, Carolina's offense has been moving the ball down the field now with Rico Dowdle in the backfield. You can't just take that out of the lineup for the sake of having a captain and a running back that you are paying good money to just to have him on the field. So I like I said at the top, the first week or two is going to be a bit of watch and learn. But I feel like, again, with the way that Rico has played in this offense so far, you can keep him in your lineups. Obviously, he's not going to be a running back one. He's probably going to be low-end running back two. You may have to play him in a flex spot. But I feel like he's not going to be getting off the field anytime soon.
So that is the important question here, is what did the Panthers actually end up doing in Chuba Hubbard? He's a captain of the team, right? They are paying him. The worth of his contract is what? Just over $33 million. This year it's only like 5.7 million in terms of value, but to be fair, like it's what they owe Chuba Hubbard by the end of his contract, right? So Cameron, I'll leave that to you. How do you balance that out? A guy you're paying money to, a guy you invested in this offseason, much more so than Rico Dowdle, and he's the captain of your football team. Like I don't know if you can look this team in the face and be like, yep, captain of our team. Sorry, he's lost all privileges as the running back one. Especially against two defenses that, look, Nick Arcolano put it out. If your player performed against the Miami Dolphins or the Dallas Cowboys, amongst other teams listed, they simply just did their job.
Yeah. So my issue is if you're in a timeshare in the Carolina Panthers backfield, I don't know if it matters how good you are because I don't know if this team is good enough where you're going to put up enough points that it's truly going to matter. The issue I see is we saw 64 touches over the last 2 weeks for Rico Dowdle, and he had 2 touchdowns. Like you said, they played Miami and Dallas.
Lots of cramp calves, lots of bananas.
Yep. So you got Jets, Buffalo, Green Bay, New Orleans actually have been pretty good against the run. Atlanta, San Francisco, Rams, New Orleans, Tampa, Seattle to finish out the season. Like that's not an easy schedule. By any means, especially from a team that, like, if you want to establish a run. So I'm just looking at the rest of the season, and I'm thinking this guy feels like he has Bill Krosky Merritt type upside from the first 4 weeks of, hey, I don't think he's going to get to a ton of volume because I don't think they're going to run enough, and Chuba's going to be involved in this offense. And so you're hoping that he hits efficiency and maybe he finds the end zone, but I don't think it's going to be something that you can bank on week in and week out. And I'm really happy Rico broke out, but he's 27 years old. And we've, last year we saw 4.6 yards per carry, which was awesome for him, but that feels kind of like his ceiling. So it feels like we've gotten 2 great games against bad defenses where they used him a ton. Maybe this is a Jay Ajayi flash in the pan kind of a thing. So I don't know. That's kind of where I land with Rico Dowdle.
Jay Ajayi is a pull there. That's not a name I would have thought of. But I mean, you even look at the schedule coming up. It's the Jets, who are like middle of the pack. The Bills you can run on. Then you got the Packers, Saints, again middle of the pack. Atlanta, San Francisco, the like all these are teams that I'm just like, they're not the Cowboys or the Dolphins, right? And I'm just kind of to the point where I'm like, I don't know about you. Maybe I'll let you get last word in here. I kind of with Cam, I feel like this is going to be a backfield that I don't want to know how to sort out in future weeks, and I'm worried they're both just going to give you like RB28 weekly finishes because no one can decide who's really the true RB1 here, and Carolina doesn't want to sit a captain with monetary value they have sunk into.
I mean, not to spoil a conversation that we're going to have about a player from this team later, but would you rather have one of these pieces, Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard from the Carolina backfield, or would you rather have a piece of the Seattle backfield with Zach Charbonnet and Ken Walker? That was pretty quick. I thought we were going to talk about Seattle in a second, but
I'm pretty easily Seattle as well. So
yeah, we'll discuss Seattle in a bit. So stay tuned. We'll discuss that backfield shortly. But a running back who can I just say Rico Dowdle has looked very 2024 Saquon Barkley-esque over the last 2 weeks, where he's been plowing through people. That's a wild statement. It's totally not within context whatsoever. But Saquon has been struggling, man. He now has 4 straight games with less than 60 rushing yards. It hasn't been great. 67% of the people over on Instagram think this trend no longer continues, that Saquon Barkley will eventually bounce back. Look, man, if it didn't happen against the Giants, do we just need the Cowboys again? Is that what it's going to take? Is it against a Minnesota Vikings run defense in week 7 that he could potentially take advantage of, Cam? I'm like, we're running out of like good matchups here for Saquon Barkley to potentially take advantage of within this Eagles offense.
Yeah, and I understand. I mean, he still had 5 yards per carry last game, so but he only saw 12 carries, only seen 18 attempts over the last 2 games. I think that's the most head scratching part of it all. It doesn't feel like they're feeding their wide receivers and they're not giving their star running back carries. So what are we doing on offenses? I think that's the scariest part of it all. But at the end of the day, you got to realize Saquon Barkley, 4 out of his 6 games, 17 plus PPR fantasy points. Like, he's still performing. It's just, obviously, if you took him as the 101 or 102 or 103 in your drafts, you're going, hey,
you're getting early third round production out of the first overall pick.
100%.
That's not great.
No, it's not, but it's not killing you at the same time. Like, I mean, Brian Thomas Jr., I love him, but he was killing you the first couple of weeks. Yeah. You were getting 7, 8, right? At least you're still getting 17, 18 points in full PPR, 13, 14 and a half PPR. But yeah, I do believe that Saquon's going to start to bounce back. I think they have to kind of figure this offense out. Minnesota, good team to run on this next week. Giants, I don't think that the Giants are going to go into Philly after they just beat them on prime time and do what they just did to them. I think Philly's going to control that game, but I think if these 2 games,
we said going into MetLife, though.
I think if these 2 games go poorly, then yeah, you really got to start worrying. But he had 18, 22, 18, 19 carries before these last 2 games, then 18 carries combined. So I think he gets back on track, albeit I don't think we're going to see running back 1 overall Saquon. That was my worry coming into the year. 400 plus touches for a 28-year-old running back. You tend to see a little bit of regression when it comes to efficiency. I think we're seeing that right now. But as far as an every week starter, I think Saquon's still fine. You just got to be okay with. I don't think we're going to see 6 yards per carry. I don't think we're going to see 18 touchdowns.
I mean, I'm even 19 for 43 against Tampa, 18 for 46.
I mean, yeah, no, they're gross stat lines for sure. They are.
I'm 12 for 58. You were at least like, okay, it's almost 5 yards per carry against the Giants, but I don't know, Ty. I think you and I talked about this last week? I talked about it with somebody on here at some point where at this point, the Kevin Patullo Eagles offense is like just given eerily similar vibes to the Brandon Johnson 2023 Philadelphia Eagles offense, where they can't figure anything out. Nothing is within rhythm. This team is still good enough from a talent perspective where they can just kind of pull wins out of their butt. But moving forward after what just happened on Thursday Night Football, like this Eagles team has got to figure it out. And I personally would like to think it starts by giving Saquon Barkley the frickin' football so he can be Saquon Barkley. But I don't know, just in a matchup like the Giants where I expected Saquon Barkley to have himself a field day, give him his 18, 19 touches, let him average 5 yards per carry, dash for 100 and a touchdown. I get it, when you fall behind, you can't just do that, but the Eagles also did themselves like no favors to get themselves ahead in this game.
Yes, we have a play caller problem here in Philly, but I think the bigger problem that we have here in Philadelphia.
Say it.
It's an offensive line problem.
Yeah.
This offensive line is nowhere near as good as it was last year. Just looking at PFF grades, they were a top 10 team in both run blocking and pass blocking last year. They're middle of the pack in run blocking this year and a top 5 pass blocking unit. So that dip in performance from your offensive line, it doesn't help when you've been battling injuries all year. Landon Dickerson got hurt in the preseason, probably wasn't at 100%, was inactive week 6, played very limited in week 5. Lane Johnson has had his own injuries. You're starting a new offensive guard. But the weird thing is that you expected Philadelphia to like get past that. You expected Philadelphia to find a way to work through that because, again, you have the talent around to make that work, and it just hasn't. So if we had a bad play caller but good offensive line, I don't think Philadelphia would be nearly as as much of a stuttering offensive unit as they are right now. But since we have a double whammy of very basic play caller, really bad offensive line play, or at least inconsistent line play, that it is affecting Saquon Barkley. I mean, last year, the calling card for Saquon was the breakaway runs. Obviously, There's no denying that.
At all.
Saquon this year is not even getting a yard and a half per attempt before he's hitting contact, before he's getting contact. Last year, it was at 3.5 yards. Cool. So there's a 2-yard difference. So it's one of those situations where it's like, I want to buy in because it is Philadelphia. It is a player of Saquon Barkley's caliber. But I feel like there's a lot that has to go right here in order to really get back to what we were getting last year with Saquon. And I'm not saying that we need running back one, Saquon Barkley back. We just need him to be top 5, and we're going to feel decent about the rest of the year. But like I said, it feels like there's just so much working against Saquon that's not helping him out, that we're kind of seeing, what it could have been last year had we not had all the breakaway runs.
Yeah, you're not getting the 30-yard touchdown scampers. You're not getting 2nd and 3 for this Eagles offense. They're playing behind the sticks more times than not, forcing the ball into Jalen Hurts' hands to make something happen. And I'm not saying this is a Jalen Hurts problem either, right? Like, is he part of it? Yes. Is the offensive line a bigger part of it? Probably. Is Kevin Patullo a part of this problem? Absolutely. I think it's not fair for us to sit here and just point blame all at one person, but I think we can all agree Kevin Patullo he's not Kellen Moore. That's a problem compared to last year's Eagles. Yeah, we can throw blame at. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? It's like I clearly there's a gap in play caller here. That's a problem. So we can sprinkle it there. The offensive line is clearly a problem in terms of what it was last year. So that's why we're seeing regression from Saquon Barkley. Yeah, well, now you understand why people call it the Super Bowl hangover, because sure, this Eagles team is still 4-2 to start the season, but they certainly feel much more like a 3-3 team than they do a dominant 4-2 team, especially after that loss to the Giants on Thursday Night Football. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing Pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the higher on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of Pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you put your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. All right, fellas, let's move it on to another big name. Look, Patrick Mahomes has just been he's been having the most quiet, 26 points per game this year ever. Nobody wants to talk about how good Patrick Mahomes has been because he has now had 27 plus fantasy points in 3 straight games. I am shocked to see that only 62% of people think this trend continues. Because this Kansas City Chiefs team can't run the football. So what are they going to do? Are they just not going to throw the football? They're getting all their playmakers back. You've got Xavier Worthy back. You've got Travis Kelce, albeit now engaged, maybe not as focused on football. Travis Kelce, that's a very generalized statement. But then you're getting Rashee Rice back here soon too. So I don't get it. Cameron, what else does Patrick Mahomes need to do for the people to convince them that he's actually absolutely back in the top 5 conversation for fantasy football?
Yeah, it's crazy. And the craziest thing is how he's doing it. Patrick Mahomes right now is second in rushing yards. He is only 13 rushing yards behind Justin Fields for the lead. Now, I know Lamar's obviously missed time. When we're recording this, Josh Allen hasn't played yet. So I guess we should say
Jane Daniels has missed time. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've had some things, but the fact that right now he's got 30 more rushing yards than Jalen Hurts. He is second in the NFL in quarterback rushing touchdowns. Right? He's doing it on the ground in a way we haven't seen. And the way he's doing it where it's chaotic, and as Chris Collinsworth said on the broadcast, we've never seen a quarterback take a hit like Mahomes did last night. That is complete. I can't get over that Collinsworth said that. I'm sorry. It was just, it was so bad. It was bad. We make fun of him glazing, and it was just brutal. All right. Sorry. I got sidetracked. I was trying to figure out a way to sneak that in there. My hatred for that call, but we're seeing, yards per attempt is still a little bit lower down at 7.1, but 1,500 yards. He's 6th in the NFL. He has 11 touchdowns. And like you said, you get Rashee Rice back. So I don't really see why this would end because he's kind of getting it done all over the place. Defense isn't quite as good as they were last year. So he's had to score. And quarterback 3, 4, 1 the last 3 weeks. Maybe you're not a top 3 quarterback, but he's putting up points. And I think we're back to that top 5, 6 quarterback finish for Patrick Mahomes this season.
This Chiefs team just looks completely different on offense too. They're no longer doing this dink and dunk, like death by 1,000 paper cuts to a defense, like dink and duck, quack quack. They are starting to spread the ball out over the middle of the field, and not do this baby stuff as they kind of march down the field. Ty, what say you? I'm with the trending here, the 62%. I'm just still shocked this isn't closer to 70%.
Yeah, this one is a bit surprising. If you had to take a guess who leads the league in QB scrambles this year, who would you guess?
I'm going to assume Mahomes since we're talking about him.
It's Mahomes.
Well, it's Mahomes. I was trying to think of a different name to throw out there, and I was going to say Drake May, but that's not true because Drake May has actually been phenomenal from the pocket this year. But I digress.
Yeah. Continue. Mahomes. And Josh Allen, like Cam said, has not played yet when we're recording this, so it could change by when you listen to this tomorrow or Wednesday or whenever. But when we just look at guys who have played through week 6 already, the next closest is Drake May with 21.
Oh, I was right. All right.
Yeah.
I feel better about that.
Patrick Mahomes leads the league in dropbacks because, again, Kansas City's offense right now is just move the chains. It is not taking the deep shots. They have taken some shots this year with Tyquan Thornton. But if they're going to continue to just kind of methodically work their way downfield, and methodically meaning the most chaotic, because again, Patrick Mahomes needs to scramble for
boring stuff that they've done the last 2 years.
Right. Patrick Mahomes is going to be a top 3 guy by year's end if he continues this kind of rushing production. It doesn't matter how it looks. It doesn't matter if it's designed or if it's a scramble. If he's just going to pick up yards and he's going to scramble into the red zone, into the end zone when they get inside the 10,
Right.
There's not much else to it other than like that's going to continue to happen unless we see an offensive system change or philosophy change. I don't think that's going to happen at this point in the year.
I don't know how you look at that running back room and you tell yourself, oh yeah, the rushing stats will regress for Mahomes. They'll start feeding the run. I don't know how you look at what Isaiah Pacheco or Kareem Hunt have been doing and say, yeah, those guys are going to take away from what Patrick Mahomes is doing on the ground. Like I don't know where people would get that from. And the offensive line play hasn't been up to par as it's been in years past, forcing Mahomes to scramble a bit more as well. But I don't know, man. Cam, I don't know about you. I'll let you get last word in here. I just don't. You could take away the touchdowns, sure, but boo-hoo, you're still looking at a 25 points against Detroit last week. You're looking at a 22 points against Jackson. Like, these are still quarterback one playable week in, week out numbers. Like, to me, even if he doesn't get the touchdown, he's still playable every single week as like a top 7 option.
Yeah. And honestly, if he doesn't get the touchdowns, it's probably because he's throwing them. The only way they're running in a score is if they have it on the 1 and give it to Kareem Hunt because they refuse to use Pacheco inside the 10, and Kareem Hunt can't run more than 2 yards at a time. So it's like they have to be inside, at the 2-yard line or closer. And half the time, Andy Reid schemes something up to do that. So, yeah, I don't see this regressing. I mean, I see it regressing a little bit, from the point that he's at 24.8 fantasy points per game right now. He's QB1, he's ahead of Josh Allen. I could see him finishing closer to 20 fantasy points per game, but still, you're like we said, we're just still talking about a top 5-6 guy in fantasy football right now. He's an every week starter, no matter what, moving forward.
Which feels like a stupid statement with Patrick Mahomes.
It does, 100%.
Right? Because it took like 2.5 years, 2.5 years maybe for people to catch up to like, oh, wait, this Chiefs offense is really boring and they aren't throwing the ball at a rate that helps Patrick Mahomes score top 8 fantasy numbers. Oh yeah, we probably should maybe not be drafting that guy so aggressively, but yet here we are now. And it's like, wait, people are hesitant to be back on the ship, where I'm like, I'm seeing like quarterback 1 overall potential here for Patrick Mahomes this year. Like, I would rather be on this ship than go down pretending that this that this isn't real and that the Kansas City Chiefs offensive philosophy hasn't changed. And they're about to get all their playmakers back. Oh, and they can't run the football. So they're, literally alien of quarterback has to run more. I don't know what we're waiting for here to like jump back on the ship. Like, I would rather jump back on and be wrong than try and just be a Patrick Mahomes hater and just look silly within the process. Like that doesn't make any sense in my head. Let's move on back to the running back position, because Ty, you brought up this team earlier. Kenneth Walker has been the RB26 or worse in 3 straight games now. This timeshare with Zach Charbonnet is like infuriating at this point. And infuriating feels like an understatement, because I don't know why in the world the Seahawks continue to feed Zach Charbonnet touches when he is dead last in yards per carry amongst qualified rushers at only 2.6 yards per carry. Yet somehow, some way, he has been the backfield leader in carries over the last 2 weeks. I want to be with the 46% here and think that Clint Kubiak has some sense of sanity left in him and says, here you go, Ken Walker. You are the more explosive running back than Zach Charbonnet. Please have more touches in this backfield. I want to side with the 46% or the 54% here, and say that this slide is going to end and Ken Walker turns it around and returns value on his RB17 ADP that you took him at to start the season. But maybe this is where I'll let you start, because you brought it up in comparison to the Carolina backfield earlier.
Yeah. So I've been saying this like all year. We're not getting enough high value touches right now with Ken Walker, even though he looks like the more efficient, explosive back. He's not getting the high value touches. The goal line stuff is going to Charbonnet. The third down work is going to Charbonnet. The 2-minute drill where you can get some receiving work potentially, that's going to Charbonnet as well. So all of Ken Walker's work is on the early downs. And I'm just going to make this comparison. You guys will hate this. Ken Walker is the Jameson Williams of running backs this year, because you need the big plays in order to pay off a decent week in fantasy. And I don't know how many times we're going to get those, because that's the ceiling, but the floor is it's going to cost you your week. You may only get 4, 5, 6 fantasy points because all he's going to get is yards. So when I brought up the Carolina backfield, I maybe I was being too pessimistic on the Seattle backfield, too optimistic with Carolina's backfield. But at least with Carolina's backfield, I see that as whoever's going to be the hottest hand, you go with that back will have more work in that game. Seattle, it's structured and it's super
drive by drive.
Exactly. So I'm willing to take the chance with the Carolina backfield that says, hey, you know what? Rico Dowdle is actually having a really good game. Let's go with Rico Dowdle. Is that tough to predict? Yes. With Seattle, at least you know the roles, but it's going to be super tough to predict exactly who's going to make the most of those opportunities. So I think at that point, it's just a preference thing. But I'm with you of like, if you voted for the ending, you are optimistic that Clint Kubiak comes to his senses a little bit and gives Kenneth Walker more work as the season goes on. But we're 6 weeks into the season and that hasn't changed yet.
If Clint Kubiak is a good offensive coordinator, and I think Clint Kubiak is a good offensive coordinator, I think he would be able to come to his senses. Again, from Ian Hartitz, Zach Charbonnet might not be creating big plays, but hey, you know what? He has the position's third worst explosive play rate at 1.7%. But get this. He also has the league's highest rate of runs for 0 or negative rushing yards. 32%.
Yes.
32%.
Gosh, he's good.
That is an absurd. At some point, you have to watch the football, Clint Kubiak, and say, by gosh, Zach Charbonnet cannot pick up positive yards for us. At some point, he has to recognize that and say, what if instead of rotating every other drive, we give Ken Walker a drive and a half, and then give Zach Charbonnet the rest of the drive and a quarter of the... At some point, you got to stop playing this stupid game of it's Ken Walker's drive this time and Zach Charbonnet's drive this time, and then feed your better running back the football. Plain and simple. That's where I'm at. If you're Clint Kubiak, come to your senses, dude. If you're a good offensive coordinator, give your best players the football.
Yeah, he's essentially in the David Montgomery role, but doesn't get end zone work, which is not a great place to be, since that's really the only reason.
I don't even know if that's fair. Because I feel like neither of them are in any role. They're in like the Ken Walker role and the Zach Charbonnet role, where neither of them are valuable.
He's closer to a Travion Henderson role than we want to admit.
Which, it's so silly when Zach Charbonnet is. Oh my gosh.
8 receptions is just killer for Ken Walker. I mean, that's that's diabolical. So, I mean, if you're in a full PPR league, you're really, really feeling it. I mean, even half, because he's only getting 1 reception a game since week 1. So I don't know. I mean, you got to buy week 8. So I guess the hope is there. They look at the film and go, oh, wow, we'll see what every single other person has seen. Maybe let's change it up. I guess that's your hope. But if it stays the way it is right now, you don't got much hope unless he starts breaking, big play after big play. And they don't really need him to, because JSN does that every other time he touches the ball. So it's like, oh, there's your big play threat now.
Well, I've said this for a bunch of good teams already this year. They're winning. So
they are winning.
To force the change right now.
Right. That's the biggest problem here too, is that they are a winning football club right now. So yeah, I think hopefully, gosh, I can't even say hopefully, because with the week 8 bye coming up, Ken Walker doesn't do any good in your fantasy lineups and when he's giving you 0 points. But I don't know, are you just kind of playing a waiting game until week 9 then of like maybe Ken Walker bounces back? Which also makes me nervous as someone who's wants to identify as part of the 54% here and say this will end. Ken Walker is already proving he's the better back, because every time Zach Charbonnet is on the football field, we're all like, wow, there's another -3 to +3 yard gain and nothing more than that. Maybe you're just waiting till week 9 until something changes. But yeah, Ty, it's so good to point out where JSN is getting the explosive plays. They're a winning football club. do they have much reason to change right now? I don't know. I'm not the one to officially answer that, but it is something to consider moving forward in fantasy football. Let's move on to the tight end position. We'll two tight ends specifically have been performing exceptionally well recently. Darren Waller has started to come on for the Miami Dolphins here, especially now that Tyreek Hill is donezo for the season. Over the last 3 weeks, he has caught 4 touchdowns. We were all saying coming into this week, this could be the tide turning towards Darren Waller being more involved in this offense. It was a very pedestrian day until he caught a touchdown late in this game. But we asked people, trending or ending, 68% of them think this trend continues, that Darren Waller is a mainstay in this Miami Dolphins offense and that he's probably their biggest red zone threat as well. Cameron, I'll start with you on this one. Can we continue to expect basically like top 7 tight end play from Darren Waller week in, week out?
I honestly don't know why we wouldn't be able to expect it. I understand the volume's a little lower, and no, I'm not expecting a touchdown every single week. But if you're watching Darren Waller, I mean, he's snap counts continue to rise week after week. He was still limited or out on Wednesday and then limited Thursday, Friday with that hip injury. So as that starts going away and he's practicing more, he's getting into the game flow a little bit more. I think it's going to be even more Darren Waller. Like, we have to remember, he was a late addition to camp, missed the first couple of weeks because he was still just trying to get into football shape, and has come out these last 3 weeks and he's tight end 1 overall in points per game and half PPR. So I don't really know why you wouldn't be rolling with Darren Waller unless you got a Tyler Warren, Jake Ferguson, Trey McBride player right now. Because if you're looking at streaming or Darren Waller, I think it's pretty obvious Darren Waller every single week moving forward, because he has that red zone. He's a red zone threat. And on top of that, volume is probably only going to rise because it's Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and who else there right now?
That's the thing that it comes down to for me is I know the volume isn't there, but you can only feed Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane so much before you need to get another warm body involved in this offense. I think the thing that's just so difficult for me to wrap my head around is, sure, I look at the volume of 2 receptions for 12 yards, 3 receptions for 27 yards. The touchdowns obviously kind of bail you out there, but Ty, the thing that's like baffling to me in all this too is like Darren Waller's just kind of like forcefully become needed in this offense. Because you talk about prior to the season, Cameron, he's trying to get into football shape. There were some comments by this coaching staff that to me indicated they were probably potentially going to cut him, that he actually wasn't going to be playing football for the Miami Dolphins this year. Yet now here he is, seemingly I don't want to call him a vital part of this Miami offense, but Tyler, he's at this point to me like a mainstay of this Miami Dolphins offense, even if, he's not seeing 7-8 targets per game.
The last 2 weeks, Darren Waller has ran 70% or more of the total routes like possible in a game. So like he's involved. I will say though, in some weird way, there's a part of me that thinks that he needs Mike McDaniel to maintain this kind of relevancy.
As in like Mike McDaniel to maintain his coaching job?
Correct. Which
so you're putting McDaniel on the hot seat, which I don't think is a hot take.
No, like he is on the hottest seat after Brian Callahan was fired.
After Brian Callahan, he's second, right?
So again, there's just a part of me. I don't know how much that would affect things, just because you would retain literally every other piece in person on the offensive staff. So maybe there's not too much change there then that happens. But there's a part of me that then worries like, well, if Darren Waller's kind of the red zone guy right now with Mike McDaniel calling the shots. What happens if he's fired? We go to a new play caller. Does Ollie Gordon start getting more involved closer to the red zone? And so then they don't need Darren Waller to really be kind of their go-to guy in the red zone, because we also just need to admit he's not really a volume guy at the moment. So you are relying on touchdowns here. So I feel like I called the Jets a very fragile situation last week when we were talking about about Justin Fields in last week's trending or ending. I feel like I can say the same thing for Darren Waller here, that it's super fragile, that if we don't get the touchdowns, it's not going to be great, but you know that as long as he is the guy in the red zone for this team, he's probably going to be a startable piece for your fantasy teams then.
Yeah, the other trend you could point out here is that outside of a 78-yard game, he only has 39 receiving yards against the Chargers and Jets total against those two teams. To which you can say that's not exactly giving me high-end tight end production, but when he's scoring the touchdowns, it certainly helps. So I don't know. With Cleveland coming up this next week, it's a little bit tough to dictate what role Darren Waller will, or how productive Darren Waller will actually be. For now, though, he's on the field for a Miami Dolphins offense that needs pass catchers. I'm willing to side more with the 68% here that this trend will probably continue. And my guess is that, we're probably going to see anywhere from like 4 to 7 targets for him every game. And whether that turns into 5 for 78 or 3 for 38 is to be determined. The touchdowns at this point are hopefully the icing on the cake that you need to elevate Darren Waller into like a top 7 play week in and week out. Let's wrap it out because there is one more. Gosh, there's one more tight end we need to talk about, fellas. This one makes me want to vomit because Dallas Goedert, over his last 3 games, correct me if I'm wrong, he's been a top 10 tight end in fantasy football in each of the last 3 weeks.
Yes.
He's been the tight end 1 in 2 of the last 3 weeks.
And when you've seen how it's been done, painful.
And the reason, normally, I used to I won't call myself a Dallas Goedert stan, but in drafts when you're getting into the 7th, 8th round, 9th round, and you're looking for the David Njoku's or the guys who are in the David Njoku range this year, I'd be like, what, Dallas Goedert is perfectly fine pick, high-powered Eagles offense. He'll get his every once in a while. I'm not looking for high ceiling. I'm just looking for a guy who will maintain top 12 production throughout the course of the year. This is disgusting to me because it should be Saquon Barkley. It should be A.J. Brown. It should be Devonta Smith. Not Dallas freaking Goedert. We shouldn't be having questions about all these other weapons. We should be having questions about Dallas Goedert, and not even questions. We should be reminded that Dallas Goedert is this fugazi of a tight end on one of the league's best offenses that shouldn't be scoring points at the rate that he is. Yet somehow, 67% of the people think this trend continues, and I just I don't know what to do. 4 for 37, 3 for 19 on 9 targets. You finally got 9 for 110 and 1 this last week against the Giants. 7 for 44. What do I do with this? I can't say he's consistent volume getter. I can't say he's scored. I guess he has scored 5 touchdowns over the last 4 weeks. Guess you got that going for you. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm just avoidant of wanting to admit that Dallas Goedert is just a top 6 tight end play moving forward.
His career
because these stat lines are disgusting. Go ahead. I just need to shut up and let you two talk because I still don't know what to think about this.
You have faked me out 6 times. You're giving us the pause, and then you keep going, and then I'm like,
I'm just processing.
He is currently tied his career high in touchdowns with 5 in the season.
Gosh.
Last time he had 5 touchdowns was 2018 or 2019. Excuse me. Sorry. So pre-COVID was the last time that this man had 5 touchdowns in a season. He's already done that through the first 6 weeks, and he missed a game this year. So all that to say, I'm not banking on the touchdowns being overly sticky with him, especially when like you said, you have an A.J. Brown who's been a top red zone threat throughout his career. When you have a Saquon Barkley who's been a touchdown scorer, you have Jalen Hurts who scores such. I mean, just the touchdowns that he's scoring have been I understand they're designed plays going to Dallas Goedert, but I think if you're
garbage flea flicker, not flea flicker,
shovel
garbage
pass.
Designed shovel pass that wasn't even a shovel. It's disgusting. Why is Dallas Goedert getting that touch?
I think if your offense is falling apart, you start moving away from designed Dallas Goedert touches, and maybe you move towards designed Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley touches. So
Oh God, hold on. Can I just say, I feel like you strategically ordered that Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, Saquon Barkley.
Whoa.
You didn't lead with Saquon, AJ, then Devonta.
I had already
Devonta
talked about
truther.
I had already talked about Saquon and AJ Brown. And hey, if we're gonna talk about, I mean, who's been the best over the last 2 games between those 3? It has been Devonta Smith. So if we're gonna order them, we probably should be most recent play. But I digress. I don't see them continuing to use him in the way that they have moving forward.
Sorry, I'm just gonna jump in on this one because the question that needs to be asked is Philly going to turn things around? Or is this the Philly that we're getting the rest of the year?
That's the question. That as like if you did drop that, Cameron, of like if Philly is going to turn things around, you probably start moving away from Dallas Goedert, and I think that's a very valid question, Ty.
And well, you can believe that. That's not a problem. But I don't want to expose the group chat too much. We were not very happy with Philadelphia on Thursday night.
Oh,
we were saying they are not a real team, which is funny.
I tweeted out that they were a sorry football team.
I think this is just the Philly team that we have this year, which stinks that they're going to be borderline top 10 rather than a top 3 unit. So like we can debate all day about the nuances of like, well, do the touches in the red zone go to AJ Brown? Do they go to Devonta Smith all of a sudden? Do they go? We could have that debate for years, but the question really, again, is do we expect Philly to like get going? Do we expect them to get back to the levels, turn things around to get back to the levels of last year? And I don't know. So Dallas Goedert, I would throw in the same boat as Darren Waller. Super fragile right now. There is nothing really to bank on other than the touchdowns. Yeah, we got 11 targets and 9 targets in the last 2 games. What's to say that some of those start going to Devonta Smith now? We can draw this up so many different ways to the point where I think at this point, I'm ready to just kind of throw in the towel and be like, I don't care. I really don't care until I see something different. I really don't care about Philly because this is what it's going to be like.
Can one of you pull up the schedule for the Philadelphia Eagles coming up? Because I know it's Minnesota and then the Giants again. Your boy can't because, mouse malfunction. Can't get this stupid thing to turn back on right now, so I can't pull it up myself. But
the
Eagles have coming up after the Vikings and Giants again.
Then they go at Green Bay, Detroit, at Dallas, Chicago, at Chargers, Vegas, at Washington, and at Buffalo.
What I'm trying to find in that is there a spot where the Eagles drop 2 or 3 in a row and Kevin Patullo is canned?
This one, where they lose to Minnesota.
Well, so that's the question.
McCarthy.
Right, because if they lose to Minnesota, I think there's questions to be had. And then if they host the Giants and that game is even remotely competitive, I think you have questions going into the bye week of can this continue coming out of the bye. So I think it is this stretch, but my problem is I look at Minnesota and I know they're fresh off the bye. I don't know if they're a good enough football team to knock off the Eagles. They look like a 3-2 football team. Like that's what the Vikings are. They're like a 2-3, 3-2 football team. And then Cameron, you named it. Do we really think the Giants are going to come into Lincoln and knock off the Eagles for the second time in 3 weeks? So that's where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if this offense actually turns it around. Because as long as Kevin Patullo is there, I don't know if we're actually going to – I don't know when he's going to turn it around. That's the biggest question. That's the biggest question in my mind.
Who do we think would actually take over play calling duties though? If
that's
Patullo
the other problem. That's the other problem.
Because
Angio. Just call both sides.
Both sides. Because the passing game coordinator in Philly right now is Parks Frazier. I don't know if you remember that name or that guy, but he was the offensive coordinator in Indianapolis when Jeff Saturday was the interim coach.
Yeah. Ooh.
So
not great.
It's not great. So your only hope is that maybe it does, we do Cam Patullo and then it's Nick Sirianni who calls the plays.
Mike McDaniel.
Well, do you just skip back? Right. Well, okay. So could it work out perfectly for Philadelphia?
Oh my gosh.
That would be a Howie Roseman move.
No.
Can we just get reckless right now? When's the Miami Dolphins bye week?
I don't know.
Are they week 9?
No, they are week. What is it?
12.
Week
They're week 12.
12.
If he makes it to the bye week, they're just gonna keep him.
Yeah, right. No. Yeah, right. They'll wait till after the season is over. If they lined up with the Eagles, I couldn't remember when their bye week was. If they lined up with the Eagles, though, it's like, all right, if Miami's staring down the barrel of the piss poor start to the season, do they Cam McDaniel? Eagles say, great, get out of here, Petula. We'll bring in Mike McDaniel to call plays for us. Oh man,
Gross.
that would be something. I don't think we'll get that. That's just reckless speculation, obviously, as we're what are we on minute 7 of Dallas Goedert right now, which just feels stupid that we spent maybe the longest time on Dallas Goedert of all players. That's how you know we're at the end of the show here.
There's just like every Eagles game. It's just way too much time on Dallas Goedert.
Here we are. We are becoming the Philadelphia Eagles ourselves. Look, if you want more advice week in, week out, if you're wondering whether to panic on players or not, make sure you check out our Discord as well. That is down in the description of the YouTube video or audio podcast you are listening to. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel yet, make sure you do that. Hit that notification bell as well. We got trade targets coming tomorrow, and we've also got starts coming at the end of the week. Follow our other socials as well. FF Fellas over on Twitter, the FF Fellas over on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you're a YouTube person through and through, Fantasy Football Fellas shorts for you over there. All exclusive content for you there. Nothing recut from our podcast here. It's all exclusive, different content for you. So make sure you check that out as well. You can follow the personal socials. I'm at Lucas Wenzelon, at Camlaw FFF for Cameron, Tyler_Plath for Ty. You two will be back tomorrow talking some trade targets. We'll see you all then. Deuces.
Deuces.